tonight. Nigerian government says President Bola Tinubu gave go-ahead for U.S. strikes against terrorists in northwestern region. Explosion damages part of 4 buildings in Ofa, Kwara State, injuring 5 people. And House of Representatives says it is reviewing tax reform laws following alleged alterations of some portions. And on the foreign scene, 5 killed in mosque explosion in Syrian city of Homs. Good evening, this is News at 7 on Western Spring Television. I am Femi Uju. The Nigerian government says President Bola Tinubu gave the go-ahead for the U.S. strikes against terrorists in the country's northwestern region. Foreign Affairs Minister Yusuf Tuga said these on Friday, hours after the U.S. Department of War and President Donald Trump announced the North American nation had conducted strikes against the terrorists. Some have viewed the strikes as a violation of the country's territorial integrity, but Tuga says the federal government would not take any actions that would violate the country's sovereignty. On Thursday, the Department of Defense said multiple ISIS terrorists were killed in the strikes conducted at the behest of the Nigerian government. Although the details of the attack were not stated, the Department of War later published a short video clip showing an airstrike in Nigeria. Temitope Ajijelo has more on this.
After months of warning that the U.S. could take military action to stop violence against Christians in Nigeria, President Donald Trump announced on Christmas Day that he had done just that, delivering a strike on Islamic State terrorists in the country's northwest. U.S. Africa Command said it conducted the strikes in Sokoto State, which borders Niger to the north, in coordination with Nigerian authorities. AFRICOM's initial assessment is that multiple ISIS terrorists were killed in the ISIS camps, according to a news release. Nigeria's foreign ministry confirms that the 2 countries had coordinated on the strike, and one presidential advisor said the U.S. and Nigeria were on the same page in the fight against terrorism. Yusuf Tugar said the strikes had been planned for quite some time and had used intelligence information provided by Nigeria. He also did not rule out further strikes. Referencing the timing of the strikes, he said it did not have anything to do with Christmas. It could be any other day. It is to do with attacking terrorists who had been killing Nigerians.
What I can confirm is a joint operation between Nigeria and the U.S. that has targeted terrorists. It has nothing to do with a particular religion. It is, as far as we're concerned, targeting terrorists that have been attacking Nigerians, period. So it has nothing to do with one religion or another. And nor does it have anything to do with Christmas. It could be any other day. It is to do with attacking terrorists that have been killing Nigerians.
Camps run by the group in Sokoto State, which lies on Nigeria's border with Niger, were hit. The U.S. military said, adding that an initial assessment suggested multiple fatalities. U.S. President Donald Trump said the Christmas Day strikes were powerful and deadly and labeled the group terrorist scam, saying it had been targeting and viciously killing primarily innocent Christians. The Nigerian government has been fighting a complex network of jihadist groups, which includes Boko Haram and IS-linked splinter groups, for several years. The Trump administration has previously accused the Nigerian government of failing to protect Christians from jihadist attacks and has claimed a genocide has been perpetrated. Trump has previously labeled Nigeria a country of particular concern, a designation used by the U.S. State Department that provides for sanctions against countries engaged in severe violations of religious freedom. The U.S. military was ordered to prepare to intervene in Nigeria in November. In a separate post on X, formerly Twitter, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said he was grateful for Nigerian government support and cooperation. The airstrikes comes one day after a bomb ripped through a mosque in Nigeria's northeastern city of Maiduguri, killing 5 people and injuring dozens in a suspected suicide attack. Last week, the Trump administration recalled more than 24 ambassadors from posts around the world, including Nigeria and several other African countries, appointed by former President Joe Biden. Since taking office in January, Trump has conducted military strikes in Yemen, Somalia, Iraq, Iran, Syria, the Caribbean Sea, and the Eastern Pacific Ocean. Meanwhile, Islamic cleric Sheikh Ahmad Gumi has criticized the United States' recent airstrikes and terrorist camps in northwestern Nigeria. He described the attacks as potentially polarizing and detrimental to national sovereignty. In a post on Facebook on Friday, Gumi argued that annihilating terrorists is an Islamic obligation, citing the Prophet Muhammad's wish to destroy such groups. However, he stressed that such action should be undertaken by clean, holy hands, rather than foreign powers whose past, he claimed, includes killing innocent civilians. Gumi urged the federal government to hold military cooperation with the U.S. and instead seek assistance from neutral countries such as China, Turkey, and Pakistan. He added that dropping bombs cannot tackle terrorism effectively, noting that Nigeria has sufficient personnel for ground operations. The cleric also describes the airstrikes in Sokoto, a largely Muslim area, as symbolic of a new crusade war against Islam and criticized the focus on regions with minimal immediate terrorist threats. Temi Tokbe, Ajijola Oluwaola, Western Spring Television News.
The People's Democratic Party has criticized the federal government for not announcing the airstrikes by the United States before President Donald Trump did so. Trump took to Truth Social on Thursday to announce the U.S. has struck in northwest Nigeria, during which several terrorists were killed. The Nigerian government later confirmed the attacks and said they were carried out in collaboration with the U.S. But PDP spokesman Ini Emomobong says the federal government ought to have briefed Nigerians before the U.S. authorities did so. PDP said the passive confirmation of the knowledge and cooperation of the Nigerian government and the operation leaves it deeply concerned about a communication structure where foreign powers break the news of security operations in the country before government does. An explosion has rocked and damaged part of 4 buildings in Kwara State on Thursday night, injuring about 5 people, including a couple and their little daughter, raising security concerns barely hours after the United States announced airstrikes against ISIS targets in northwestern Nigeria. The incident, which occurred around midnight on Christmas Day, was said to have happened at 2 separate locations within Ofa. According to reports, the first explosion affected several buildings around the 8 praying ground area, while the second occurred near Solid Worth Hotel, located about a 5-minute walk from the initial site. It was further gathered that an undetonated explosive device was discovered at a second location, prompting heightened security measures. Confirming the incident, the Chief Press Secretary to the Executive Chairman of our local government, Abiola Babatunde, said the council was aware of reports circulating online about the explosion. In a statement issued on Friday, Babatunde said the affected areas had been cordoned off by security agencies to allow for thorough investigation. The Ofa explosions occurred barely hours after the United States President Donald Trump announced U.S. airstrikes against ISIS targets in parts of northwest Nigeria, particularly in Sokoto State, on Christmas Day. Vice President Kashim Shettima and Borno State Governor Babagana Zulum on Friday paid a visit to the survivors of a bomb blast at a mosque in Maiduguri, Borno State.
We are here on behalf of the President to commiserate, to sympathize with the victims and reassure the good people of Borno and by extension the nation that the government remains unwavering in its commitment to secure the lives and properties of the citizenry. The governor of Borno has been up and doing, working round the clock to complement the efforts of the federal government, and we sincerely appreciate the efforts and investments in the security architecture by the Borno State government. But most importantly, we are united in victory as well as in challenges. We are one nation tied to a common destiny. By the grace of God, inshallah, this madness will soon be over.
Samuel Ladoke Akintola was a frontal figure in the historical moves that birthed an independent Nigeria from colonial Britain. As a freedom activist, he deployed his wits, energy, intellect, and oratory skills to prepare the grounds for constitutional talks that eventually culminated in the country's independence in 1960. The 13th Ààrẹ Ọ̀nà Kakanfò of Yoruba land cut his teeth as a politician when he became a foundation member of Action Group, the dominant political party in the Western region, and was elected the party's parliamentary leader of opposition at the Federal House of Representatives. The crisis in the Action Group, which pitched Samuel Ladoke Akintola against his leader, was not only a sore point in his colorful political life, but a reversal of gains which characterized the exemplary leadership of Awolowo Akintola premiership. 23 years after his death, Oyo State University of Technology Ogbomosho was renamed Samuel Ladoke Akintola University of Technology to keep his memory alive. Western Spring Television identifies Samuel Ladoke Akintola as a major character in history.
Up to 75% of human infectious diseases originates in animals. And as more bushmeat is brought into our cities, the risk of human infectious disease outbreaks increases. Ebola, monkeypox, Lassa fever, yellow fever, and even COVID-19 may have been transmitted in this way. Illegal bushmeat trade not only endangers our wildlife, but affects our health and may damage our economy. So please, say no to illegal bushmeat. Keep them wild and keep us safe.
You're welcome back. This is the news at 7 on Western Spring Television. A reminder of our headlines. The Nigerian government says President Bola Tinubu gave the go-ahead for the U.S. strikes against terrorists in the country's northwestern region. An explosion has rocked and damaged parts of 4 buildings in Offa, Kwara State on Thursday night, injuring about 5 people, including a couple and their little daughter, raising security concerns barely hours after the United States announced airstrikes against ISIS targets in northwestern Nigeria. And the House of Representatives says it is reviewing the tax reform laws following public backlash and alleged alterations of some portions of the laws. And on the foreign scene, 5 people were killed in an explosion at a mosque of the Alawite minority sect in the Syrian city of Homs on Friday. From the first day of 2025, insecurity once again dominated Nigeria's national conversation, cutting across regions, communities, and social classes. What unfolded over the year was not a single crisis, but a layered security emergency terrorism in the northeast, banditry in the northwest, communal violence in the middle belt, and mob killings and kidnapping spreading into previously calmer areas. This is a recap of how Nigeria fared in the security sector.
With renewed insurgent momentum in the northeast, in late January, suspected Islamic State West Africa province ISWAP fighters overran a military base in Marte local government area, Borno State, killing dozens of soldiers and exposing lingering gaps in frontline protection. Security analysts described the attack as a reminder that despite years of counter-insurgency operations, Boko Haram splinter factions remain operational and adaptive. Simultaneously, the Northwest recorded a surge in bandit attacks and mass kidnappings. Communities in Zamfara's Banin Magaji, Anka, and Kaura Namoda local government areas reported repeated raids, with entire villages emptied as gunmen abducted residents and imposed levies on rural populations. Bandits also struck Yankamaye village in Sanyawa local government area, Kano State, where an elderly woman was killed and 3 women abducted during a night raid, highlighting how the violence had spread beyond traditional bandit strongholds. Fazama and Chacho village, Warna local government area, Sokoto State, a wedding celebration turned into a nightmare when armed raiders seized the bride, her bridesmaids, and several guests. These attacks underscored the escalating reach of criminal networks across multiple states. Beyond insurgency and banditry, 2025 saw deadly mob violence on 28 March in Udone and Fandion, Uromi, Edo State. 16 mostly Hausa and Fulani men were lynched by a mob after being falsely accused of kidnapping. The gruesome incident triggered national outrage and reopened debates about vigilante justice, ethnic profiling, and the collapse of trust in law enforcement. In the Middle Belt, particularly in Makadi, Yelwata, and surrounding axes of Benue State, farmer herder clashes escalated with reprisal attacks, leaving scores dead and forcing thousands into temporary displacement camps. Local leaders warned that long-standing land disputes and the proliferation of small arms continue to fuel cycles of revenge. Kidnapping remained one of the most persistent threats throughout the year. The most dramatic incident of 2025 occurred on 21 November when gunmen abducted more than 300 students and teachers from St. Mary's Catholic School in Papiri, Niger State. The attack carried out in the early hours initially saw about 50 students escape on their own. Another 100 were released in early December. By 21 December, authorities announced that all remaining abductees had been freed, following a military and intelligence-driven operation, though details of the rescue were limited. The incident reverberated nationwide, reviving painful memories of earlier mass school kidnappings and raising questions about the effectiveness of existing protection measures for schools. Another mass abduction took place on 17 November in Maga Town, Wasagu Danko local government area, Kebbi State, where bandits attacked a girls' secondary school, killed a vice principal, injured a teacher, and abducted 25 schoolgirls. Most were later released after negotiations and community pressure. Nigeria's security crisis drew international political attention when U.S. President Donald Trump publicly commented on the scale of violence, describing it as alarming and calling for stronger leadership and tougher security measures.
The Nigerian government continues to allow the killing of Christians. The USA will immediately stop all aid and assistance to Nigeria. We're going to do things to Nigeria that Nigeria is not going to be happy about, and may very well go into that now disgraced country, guns are blazing, to completely wipe out the Islamic terrorists who are committing these horrible, horrible atrocities.
His remarks circulated widely on social media, eliciting mixed reactions domestically. While some commentators welcomed the global spotlight, others criticized Trump for oversimplifying a complex crisis and using Nigeria's challenges for political messaging. The federal government dismissed suggestions of external interference, insisting Nigeria remains capable of addressing its internal security issues.
It's impossible for there to be a religious persecution that can be supported in any way, shape, or form by the government of Nigeria at any level.
The presidency condemned the array of attacks and reaffirmed its commitment to protecting lives and property. Military and security agencies announced intensified operations, including patrols, arrests of suspected collaborators, and targeted strikes against criminal hideouts in response to mounting public pressure and perceived lapses in the security architecture. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu implemented significant changes to the country's military leadership. In late October 2025, all service chiefs were replaced in a sweeping shakeup aimed at infusing new direction into the armed forces. Within days, the then Defense Minister Muhammad Badaru Abubakar resigned citing health reasons, and General Christopher Gwaben Musa, formerly Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff, was nominated as the new Minister of Defense. This reappointment reflected an effort to leverage Musa's operational experience and strategic insights in confronting the multifaceted insecurity challenges. Nigeria's Musa's tenure as Chief of Defense Staff had been marked by public statements acknowledging deeper socio-economic drivers of insecurity, including hunger and poverty, which he identified as strategic threats to stability. His leadership also confronted internal challenges within the military, including allegations of saboteurs involved in high-casualty incidents like the Yellow Water massacre in Benue State, where over 200 civilians died.
Given the complex and evolving security environment confronting our nation, Nigeria continues to face a combination of terrorism, banditry, criminality, and other asymmetric threats that require strategic focus, sustained focus, strategic clarity, and adaptive leadership. I'm confident that the deliberation at this conference will generate actionable recommendations and innovative approaches that will enhance operational effectiveness in the year 2026 and beyond, while reinforcing the Nigerian Army's role as a central pillar of national stability.
Human rights organizations and civil society leaders remained critical of the federal response, warning that casualty figures continue to rise despite official assurances. They urged a recalibration toward intelligence gathering, policing reforms, and community engagement, rather than an excessive reliance on military force alone.
Take care of our security and welfare, because it is stated in the bourgeois constitution of Nigeria that the welfare and security of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. Yes. So this is not a matter that requires foreign invasion of our country. We kicked against, in 1962, Nigerian youths fought against the Anglo-Nigerian Defense Pact. Since then, we have resisted any attempt by France and the United States of America to have military bases in Nigeria. This time around,
governors and traditional leaders amplified long-standing calls for the establishment of state policing structures. They argued that locally rooted security frameworks could respond more effectively and rapidly to threats, given their deeper understanding of community dynamics and terrains. Throughout 2025, government officials repeatedly promised reforms, deployment of new surveillance technology, recruitment of additional security personnel, and enhanced federal-state security coordination. Authorities also stated intentions to discourage ransom payments and expedite prosecution of arrested suspects. By year's end, some progress was apparent. Hostages were freed, pockets of calm returned to selected areas, and community protests were acknowledged by authorities. Nonetheless, many towns and rural communities reported that while attacks may have shifted locations, they had not ceased entirely. What 2025 ultimately revealed is that insecurity in Nigeria is no longer confined to a single region or actor. It is systemic, driven by poverty, weak justice systems, arms proliferation, and limited state presence in rural areas. While military pressure disrupted some criminal networks, the absence of durable political and economic solutions meant that violence remained cyclical. As Nigeria moves into a new year, the key question remains whether lessons from 2025 will translate into meaningful change. For millions who live through attacks, displacement, and fear, security is no longer an abstract policy issue. It is a daily measure of state legitimacy. Until protection becomes consistent and accountability real, insecurity is likely to remain a defining national challenge. Temi Tokwe Ajijola Oluwaola, Western Spring Television News.
In the meantime, the House of Representatives says it is reviewing tax reform laws following a public backlash and alleged alterations of some portions of the laws. Reps spokesman Akin Rotimi said the Green Chamber has already inaugurated a committee to undertake a review to establish the sequence of events and to identify any factors that may have contributed to the circumstances surrounding the legislative and administrative handling of the act. In a statement on Friday, Rotimi, who represents Ekiti North Federal Constituency, said the review includes a careful examination of any lapses, irregularities, or external interferences, should any be established. The lawmakers said the National Assembly, comprising the Senate and the House of Representatives, has directed the clerk of the National Assembly to re-gazette the Act and issue certified true copies of the versions duly passed by both chambers of the National Assembly. Rotimi asked the Nigerians to allow the National Assembly's institutional processes to proceed without speculation or conjecture. The move comes about 2 weeks after a lawmaker from Sokoto, Abdulsamad Dasuki, raised the alarm over an alleged amendment to the gazetted version of the laws. In another development, the chairman, Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee, Taiwo Oyedele, has clarified fears about the use of tax identification numbers or bank accounts ahead of the January 2026 rollout of new tax regulations. In a posted tagged fact not fair on his X account on Friday, he said, contrary to widespread misinformation, bank accounts will not be frozen nor automatically debited if a tax identification number is not linked. He said a tax is required only for income earning or business accounts, adding that the requirement is intended for identification and data harmonization, not as a punitive measure. Oyedele urged Nigerians not to panic, noting that the tax identification number requirement primarily applies to business accounts to facilitate efficient tax administration. The clarification forms part of an ongoing public education series aimed at separating fact from misinformation in the implementation of tax reforms. And on the foreign scene,